It was Julius Nyerere who said, ambition never comes to an end. Hello and welcome to it. This is #Africa. I'm Tutuzile Ramela. We start with this. The continent is still reeling from the deadly effects of Cyclone Idai. The storm ravaged parts of Mozambique, Zimbabwe and Malawi. The death toll in Mozambique is set to rise to 1,000 people, while in Zimbabwe a state of emergency has been declared in certain affected areas.
Flooded lands, destroyed roads and disrupted communications. This is the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, which has devastated swathes of Mozambique and Zimbabwe. Officials say at least 157 people have been killed across the two nations, although Mozambique's president has warned the death toll could rise to around 1,000. He's been visiting the flooded city of Beira, home to the country's second largest port.
We have put rescue means in place and we asked our friends for more. We have rescue equipment, volunteers and doctors arriving now in Maputo. Answering to the questions on why are foreigners coming here, it's because they know how to deal with these situations and they're not charging us for their support.
In Zimbabwe, the Chimanimani district has been cut off from the rest of the country by torrential rains and winds of up to 106 miles per hour. And authorities say they also expect the death toll to rise. Zimbabwe's government has declared a state of disaster in areas affected by the storm.
Right, from Mozambique to Zimbabwe, let's get the latest on the situation in that country. I'm joined by journalist Zenzele Ndebele, who is in Bulawayo for us. So, Zenzele, perhaps just an update of what the situation is like at this moment.
From what we are getting so far, about 96 people are confirmed dead, and that number is likely to rise because there are still a lot of people who are missing, and some of them are probably were taken by the water, drowned, or in buildings that collapsed. Rescue efforts are ongoing currently. They're trying to rescue people who need to be rescued, but also get to people marooned in some areas and get them basic services like those who need medical attention, water, and all those kind of things. The biggest problem has been that most of the bridges collapsed, so the roads are inaccessible. So the biggest challenge now is to make sure that they actually open paths and ways to make sure that help reaches those that need it.
Absolutely. So that number likely to rise as it is also in Mozambique. We did see President Emmerson Mnangagwa coming back into the country. What has his word to those affected been?
Well, he has basically said that they are going to try their best, or they're going to do the best of their ability to make sure that those who have been affected actually get help and make sure that help gets there very fast. We know that the Minister of Finance has released about $50 million towards that program to try and get as much help as possible. A number of organizations and people have actually come out in the open. We've seen quite a number of initiatives to try and fundraise. I know one initiative raised about 100 million in about 2 days. The other guys have also in America have raised about 20,000 US dollars. So there are different things that people are doing to try and help. People are also bringing in stuff in different parts of the country, clothes, food, blankets, to just try and help those who have been affected.
Right. If you can quickly give us the lay of the land in terms of the areas that have been affected, just how difficult of a challenge this will be in order to access those places.
Basically, they had a district, the district that was affected most is Manicaland, and the areas we are talking about, Chimanimani, we are talking about Chipinge. These are basically hilly, very mountainous areas, and in some cases, like where the kids, 2 kids died at the school, there was a landslide, and actually a huge boulder rolled down from the mountain to the school. So that has been the case in most places where, boulders, rocks, logs were rolling down from mountains into the roads, blocking the roads. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of clearing the roads and also trying to build or have makeshift bridges where most of the bridges collapse, because you find that the areas like Chimanimani, they're actually cut off from the rest of the country. So the only way to reach them is by helicopter. So the army, and working with other guys, they are trying to find ways of making sure that they connect these cities, Chimanimani, to the rest of the country so that they can get help, but also restore communication, because in some parts there's been no network, there's been no electricity. So they're just trying to put up basic infrastructure first so that they can help. But also the problem, because of the amount of rain that was received, in some areas the surfaces are just soaking in. So even if cars, they're trying to drive, but they get stuck on the road. So it's by all means, people are trying to see how best they can reach those who are affected.
Absolutely. Zenzele Ndebele in Bulawayo for us. Thank you very much for that update, and of course our thoughts with all those who have been affected. Right, let's just focus on to this. It's been almost 2 weeks since the crash of Boeing 737 MAX 8 in Kenya. Families of the Ethiopian plane crash held symbolic burials for their loved ones who perished on that flight. DNA testing could take up to 6 months. Meanwhile, preliminary data recovered from the black box from that crash reveal similarities with the airline crash.
A symbolic burial in Addis Ababa on Sunday for victims of the Ethiopian plane crash. Ethiopian Airlines says it could take up to 6 months to do DNA testing on the remains of the 157 people who perished on board Flight 302 a week ago. This friend of deceased cabin crew Getachew Nagatu hopes the ceremony brings closure for the husband and baby she left behind. Meanwhile, details are emerging from the examination of the black box recorders from the crashed Boeing 737 MAX 8. A source that has listened to the air traffic control recording told Reuters it was travelling at an unusually high speed after takeoff. A voice from the cockpit made a request to increase altitude. But then the pilot, who sounded terrified, mentioned a flight control problem and started to make a right turn to return to the airport. The plane then vanished off the radar. A team of investigators conducting the probe in Paris could not immediately be reached to confirm the conversation. Similarities between the Ethiopian Airlines crash and a Lion Air flight over Indonesia in October have raised fresh questions about the systems on the 737 MAX. So far, there's no evidence to suggest software was to blame for either incident. But Boeing is planning to release a software upgrade in the next week to 10 days, sources told Reuters. Meanwhile, all Boeing MAX jets have been grounded worldwide because of safety concerns. The Ethiopian Minister of Transport says, given the circumstances, identifying the small remains found will be challenging.
Disaster victim identification will be carried out using reliable, scientific and international standards.
On Friday, investigators found a possible clue at the crash site, a key part of the plane's tail. The horizontal stabiliser is reportedly set in an unusual position, similar to that seen in the wreckage of the Indonesian MAX 8. The position of the stabiliser could help determine whether the plane was set nose down for a steep dive. Back in Addis Ababa, families and friends were focused, for now at least, on honouring their dead.
And we've heard this a number of times. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Well, some 300 volunteers from the Gabonese Network for Environment and Development went about cleaning Gabon's beaches. The oil-dependent nation hopes such initiatives will help boost its image as a clean destination.
Cleaning up Gabon's beaches, these volunteers are part of an army of 300 from a local NGO, helping the country's Environment Ministry to collect rubbish around the coast.
We meet every 2 weeks. There are many volunteers. We all work well together. We don't pay anyone. We're an NGO. We don't have the means. But when there is the possibility to pay, we give them at least 100,000 CFA francs. We organise a little competition to encourage the volunteers, but also to motivate those who are considering joining.
The initiative by the Gabonese Network for Environment and Development was started in June 2018. It quickly gained popularity among residents in the capital Libreville, who say they hope the project can be replicated elsewhere in the country. Gabon's economy is largely dependent on oil. It's seen robust growth in agriculture, mining and logging, but the country wants to diversify its economy further by growing its tourism industry. And officials hope exercises like these will help boost the country's image as a clean destination.
Kigali has taught us well. Let's keep our continent clean. Right, when we return, we look at the way the continent is covered by Western and African media. More on that in a moment.